Hey, peace, love, and light, everybody. This is ORRA The Informationalist, and I am doing a broadcast. My brother from the same creator, Booker Johnson. Many of you probably know Booker Johnson because he's got way more followers than I do. He has a very strong presence on TikTok. And we're going to be interviewing Booker Johnson on his book. He's got a book called The Kingdome, and we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about some other things that he discusses here on the Network of Awareness podcast radio show. Welcome to the Network of Awareness, where we pursue knowledge to expose toxic conditioning, propaganda, and global lies, inspiring critical thinking for a meaningful reality rooted in universal truths and empowering awareness. Hey, brother, can you just introduce yourself for the people that are going to be tuning into the podcast and those that may not know you on TikTok?
Absolutely. Hey, what's up? Booker Johnson here. Basically, what I do is I have taken a lot of time to study into occult teachings, reading and writing hieroglyphs of different civilizations, understanding the things that are being written versus the things that are being given to the public by having my own understanding of what they say. And the ways that I study this are through people that are tied to the ancestry, because I am myself. I come from one of the last Black Indian tribes, is all that we were allowed to know what it was, because they had been taken out during the Trail of Tears. It's like a whole lot of history that goes into why I was given access to the knowledge that I was given. And generally what we're doing nowadays is trying to bring it to the public to undo the harm that has been done by keeping it silent. The things that are known change the entire perspective about pretty much everything that's viewed, because what's being found is that all of history and all of religion has been fabricated almost completely to a point to where it erases anything that leaves any truth behind. And it's a lot of digging you have to do to actually find a lot of the information that I've been lucky enough to have come across in the past. I've just been basically on a mission to try to help people find answers to things that they didn't know that they were looking for, is the best way to put it.
I get that. I understand. I really appreciate your book. It's obviously something I have to read over and over again. I want to read the introduction real quick for people. It says, in this book, you will find you have been robbed of the full experience of living in the physical realm. This has been done through a form of hypnosis, which has been learned and taught to hinder your ability of fully enjoying the maxims of life. You have been taught how to think. Within these writings, you will find the key to assist you in reshaping your consciousness and bring you to a state of peace and serenity, born out of inner standing, which can only be reached through the reprogramming of the conscious and the subconscious. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that, because this is something I've discussed too, where it's like we've been so ingrained with a lot of nonsense information that has been rooted in our subconscious mind. But then there's a lot of things that are being given to us, like through Hollywood, through all the social constructs and the institutions, whether it be government, the polytricks, medicine, healthcare, you name it, whatever social construct, it's all based on a legacy of lies. But we have accepted it as truth because this is all we know. And a lot of it is ingrained in us in the subconscious. And a lot of it we display in our behavior consciously. I want you to talk about how do we first start to reprogram the way we think, not only in the way we perceive ourselves, but also to perceive the reality around us.
I think the easiest way to reshape everything is to start with the basic programming. The basic programming is good versus bad. The whole thing of good versus bad is solely based on your perception, and your perception is solely based on what you've been taught. So that becomes the tradition, which outlines the results that are going to be guaranteed off of the things that you get involved in. And by reprogramming these ideas of good and bad, that's why the first chapter is about love, the binding of the thought to the reality, right? which is basically your every action and everything that you do and everything you get involved in is based off of a source of love. A lot of people forget this or have been taught not to understand this, which is why a lot of actions get taken in ways that tend to bring out something negative rather than possibly teaching a lesson. Because, all right, look, so every person that you run into, a real simple example of what I'm talking about, right? Say you run into somebody, you're walking down the street, you run into somebody, and the person that you run into has like a certain attitude about them, and they give you a certain vibe or a certain feeling. And the way that they speak to you, approach you in that moment leaves you feeling a certain way, and you carry that with you. And then you're thinking about that, right? That lingers on with you throughout your day, and you're wondering about that whole scenario, and you keep replaying it over and over again in your head and wondering all of these different things. But the thing that most people don't do is put themselves in that person's shoes, because you're only looking at that perspective from, I ran into this person and got involved with this, but you're not taking it from the perspective of what could that person be involved in to make them react to you the way that they do, which makes it so that you're completely unable to understand the reflection that's going on. Say you're walking down the street and you bump into somebody that has an attitude with you. They say something rude to you or something like that for no reason whatsoever. Now, the way that you respond to that is in your shoes. That's your perspective that you're putting into that situation. So that means that the way that you respond to that is going to be mirrored throughout the completion of the existence. There's many different variations of you. Say that person says something that hurts your feelings a little bit and then they just keep on going. For you, you could have A, responded to that negatively. You could have B, said something kind in return. You could have C, said nothing to them. You could have D, left the situation unchecked, allowed them to go on persisting in that way. Now, all of these things are what people consider to be different dimensions. Each idea of a way to take that situation unfolds its entirety of reality behind it in a wave that you can't even see. You can't see unless you step into that position to where you're walking through that at that moment. That's the decision that you choose to make in that moment. That chooses your reality. Now, the whole reason that you're going to choose that is because you love things being a certain way. No matter what you're doing, no matter what choice you're making, it's because you love things being a specific way. And that specific way that you love things is going to dictate how you react, what you do, and what the outcome of that situation is. So if you can remember that when that person has that moment where they say that thing that's bothering you so much, and you realize that could be you in that same position doing that to somebody else, you then understand that everything that everybody else is doing towards you is just something that is teaching you, right? It now becomes a teaching moment rather than something that actually affects you. Why? Because you understand that whether it's you that's being you in that moment or the other you that's talking to you, that's still, they're doing something out of an act of love, but what is the perspective that they're coming from? That's when you can start to look through other people's eyes and start to see the world from a place of the observer, because then you can move around to each person's different perspective at will, because then you're actually enjoying the lessons that you're being taught, which is opening up the doorways for you to be taught more things. It's like this constant, it's like a constant thing. It never stops.
Do you think there's a best option when dealing with certain people? Remember how you were describing if somebody says something mean to you? Because I find myself being more at peace and harmony. So when somebody says something mean to me, I don't even take it to heart because I look at it as like this a them problem, not a me problem. But at the same time, if I say something positive, it's probably going to be misconstrued. It's probably going to be taken out of context. They're probably going to think that I don't mean it. Or if I stay quiet, is that the better option? Because I don't think that saying something mean back would be the best option.
Okay. So this is the whole thing. See, this is the part that I talk about a lot, about people not accepting how serious their own role is in everything. I want you to think about this for a minute. Now, everything around you is a mirror. It reflects the different type of actions and the different type of thoughts that you entertain. So if this person's coming to you, realize you're the one that is responsible for that outcome. So if they're coming to you and they're doing something that is disrespectful to you and you allow that to be something that they feel comfortable with, you yourself may be forgiving of it, but will the next be as forgiving? And so this is where that whole weight of being the center of the universe at the same time as being the universe comes into play. Because now you have to look at it like, okay, so if I don't do anything, it'll just go away and then it won't be your problem anymore. That's the general thing, right? Is we'll just keep it low and let it go, right? But in that moment, you're also teaching that same person that it's okay for them to do those type of behaviors, which means that that's going to be either a different version of you that's going to suffer from being the victim in the next position that might get taken further because the last one didn't hold any resistance. That person then goes to the other person and the other person has a loaded Glock in their pocket and decides, you know what, that's a little too much. And now that person's life is gone because they didn't face any resistance. But then it becomes the responsibility of, okay, how do I handle this in a way that makes it so that they know that what they did was wrong, at the same time, without getting them to dive deep into it even further, right? Without pissing them off further. This is where you have to have the ability to do things fairly to a point to where it's acceptable at all levels, to where your actions don't ripple out into the village into something that's going to be destructive for the entirety of the society. You have to look at things from a perspective of, okay, so what if I do this and what if I do this and what if I do this and which one is going to create the path of the most peace, the least resistance. Now, sometimes this might mean that you put yourself in a position to where you might have to take a lick. You might have to fight for it. That's the thing though, but you have to fight for it. Because if you don't, then what are you putting out there? Everybody waits for the next one to make the stand. And if everybody's always waiting for the next one to make the stand, then who makes the stand? Nobody. That's why it's you that has to do it. Because nobody else is going to do it unless you do it first. Because remember, you're the center. At the same time that you're just this, you're also everything that's around you. You control everything that's around you. You create all the scenarios that are around you through the things that you agree on. You agree by what? Doing nothing.
And to not make a decision is a decision.
Ignore it. It must be okay.
Yeah, and what was that saying? That's one of my favorite from James Allen. Circumstances don't make the man, it reveals it to himself. Yeah, very powerful quote. It is. It's powerful. I want to, by the way, people that are joining on TikTok, we're doing a pre-recorded podcast. So I decided to do something different today. And instead of just sharing it with people on the podcast network and having them listen to that audio and that visual on YouTube, I wanted to give people an opportunity to watch this live. We're going over his book called Kingdome. So this is a two-part question. The first part is called acceptance. This is actually the second chapter, acceptance. Fate of learned ones. I want to know why you gave it that title, but also I wanted to touch on this. You said, first is deja vu. What they tell you is a dream in which you can map out certain events with pinpoint accuracy of what's to come, answering all questions before an answer is sought, where every location, question, action, and said outcome are witnessed before it exists. Can you elaborate on that and also elaborate on why you gave it that title for the second chapter?
Fate of the learned ones. If you read the chapter, what it explains to you is there's a scenario in the chapter. I want you to think about this for a minute. You always see the average person getting pulled over, right? You see the average person getting pulled over all the time. Everybody that's that's a regular everyday person that everybody considers to be a regular everyday person gets pulled over and worries about being pulled over. And it's something that's in their reality because it's something that they have learned to be a consequence. It's because we've learned that this is a consequence that we accept this as being a consequence. Mind you, there are people that live in parts of society that are not taught that the police have anything to do except to answer to them. And you will see examples of this very rarely. Every once in a while, you'll see one of them pulled over. Every once in a while. Like it's a once in a blue moon thing. And when they're pulled over, they're irate. They're legitimately going off on, who do you think you are to even be pulling me over? What do you think? And they don't even live in the same reality that you do. Why? Because they were taught a different reality. They were taught a different reaction to their actions, and that's what they accept as their reality. And so they live in that very same reality. It's right next to yours. You can see them in your reality. Very rarely will you see them in your reality. Why? Because they don't exist in it. They've got a completely different plane of existence in the same one that you do. And so what we're dealing with is the fate that was given by the learned ones. The ones that learn the things that I'm learning are the same ones that have given you the fate that you've accepted. You get me? All the limitations that everybody thinks that they have are only the limitations that were taught by people that knew the bounds. That's how they were able to find the limitations and how they were able to implement them on everybody in the first place. You have to know the mechanics to be able to build it. So these are indeed the learned ones. The learned ones have controlled the fate of the general consciousness for a good amount of time.
Those are the ones that you've mentioned in your book as being the puppet masters. What I call the powers that shouldn't be, but are.
But if you realize there's a part when we're speaking about the puppet masters where it's revealed to you that it's you.
One thing I used to always say, and I still do today, I've been saying it for years. I've been saying it for over 26 years, is that I don't get sick. So for the past 26 years, I've been saying I don't get sick. And I can tell you I'm 46 years old, and still to this day, I don't get sick. You know what I mean? I get out from my dog, but and I think it's very interesting that if we only knew the power that we have to create our reality exactly to be what we want it to be, we would be better off.
It's important for you to start to accept the things that you do rather than to keep denying them to yourselves. Everybody's been taught to deny the things, like this deja vu, for instance. This is a moment when you're told that you're having an imaginary thing take place where you're dreaming, and they're telling you that your dreams are nothing but an imaginary space and there's no reality behind them whatsoever. But yet you can have a dream of a specific time and place. And in that time and place that you have that dream, every single item that is in the venue that is around you or at the place that you're at, the person that you're there with or that you're not there with, there might be somebody that's in question that you haven't even met yet, right? And you'll wake up for this and you'll wonder, what was that so much? And you'll sit there and think about it and contemplate it so much. And then after a certain duration of time, whether it be a couple hours, a couple days, a couple of weeks, a couple months, and sometimes there's even years in between. Sometimes it just takes that long to get to that point because of where that point was that you just went to. But if you were able, maybe it just took that long for it to be created the way that it needed to be created for you to be able to get to that point. But from the time that you had that moment inside of your mind, you took that out of your mind automatically just by curiosity, and the body was led to that point to answer the question of what else did you want to know about that scenario. That means that you literally take something that is in your mind before it even happens, before it even exists, and navigate through billions upon billions of different scenarios and every scenario that you could possibly get into is another dimension because each scenario unfolds its own life into itself. That's its own timeline. So think of okay, I just woke up. No, the ceiling could have fell in on me. I could have fallen over and broken my neck on that thing right there. I could have hurt my arm right there. All these different thoughts that you're having are different scenarios. So think about the fact that you can make it from out of your mind at one point into a very specific point into the future. Did you just navigate through multiple dimensions successfully without even thinking of it, doing it at will just from the very thought of wanting to get there? Or did you just create that over time in order for you to get there is the next question. Which one is it that really exists, or is it both? Because you have to create it in order for it to exist, but you also have to get to that same place that you created. So that's two verifications of skill sets that are being possessed, that are being overlooked as something that's simply imaginary or something that is just something to be blown off or that isn't really that real. Like they try to convince people that, oh, you were having a moment where it's literally impossible to have that kind of a brain fart. That's not a real thing. There's a future that you see, that you have in your creation place, because when you're in your dream state, that's your creation place. You create what you want there. You created it there within your dream space, and then you brought it into your physical reality. And then you navigated to make sure that you got to that very thing that you decided to create. So that means that you can create other things as well. It's just how much you accept about the capabilities that you truly possess that dictate whether or not you're able to truly bring these things forward. But that means that you have to undo the things that you were taught. Right now, everybody has these bounds and these shackles on them by being told the limitations of what you're able to do. But if this was the truth, then we wouldn't see things like people being cured of supposedly incurable diseases by being given sugar pills and telling them that the thing that was in the pill was going to cure them. So is it really even destructive to the body, or is that we tell the body to respond to it in a destructive manner?
Yes, you're absolutely right.
I know that I tried this out for myself, and I think I got somewhere with it. People don't truly accept how much they affect the reality that's around them. I try to explain to people, you're in heaven right now. You just don't really realize it. You get a reminder of it every time somebody passes. But outside of those moments, everybody truly forgets it and stops appreciating how things really are and what they're really doing right now. But everything is as perfect as you make it out to be. There's a lot of people that are running around saying that things are messed up right now and that everything's all jacked up and it's all out of place and the world's all screwed up and this and that. But no, it's not. It's perfect, just the way that it is. And the reason that people feel that it's imperfect is because they feel like there's more that they can do. And the reason that they feel like there's more that they can do is because of how many times they ignore what they should do. Everybody has this feeling, I shouldn't let her scream in his face like that. I shouldn't let him hit that person like that. I shouldn't allow that fight to go on. I shouldn't allow that person to sit on the side of the street. We've created this by all the times that we decided that was just okay to exist. There was no energy that was necessary for us to put into that situation. Right? And so each time that we do this, what do? We tell the universe that everything's perfect. So as far as the universe is concerned, everything's perfect. It's just the way that you like it. Everybody watches all these TV shows with these superheroes and the main characters. And, when they're watching it, the brain doesn't realize that it's not them. It's putting them in that action seat. And so it's like the world's just sitting around waiting on the hero to come and play the position that they saw themselves at. So meanwhile, all these villains are being created and everybody's, the world's all fucked up. Look at all these people that it's full with. They're doing all these horrible things. But meanwhile, nobody's saying anything. Nobody's stopping to feed that guy. Nobody took their shirt off their back and gave it to the homeless guy, or stopped to help the person that was on the side of the road when their car was broken down, or just little tiny things that make a world of a difference. That's why they have these sayings. It makes a world of a difference. Everything that you do.
And especially when you're dealing with relationships, little things count, man. I want to transition to a line here on that second chapter. It says, gut feelings are the most common example of shaping and reading reality that are ignored and can get both accepted at the same moment. Thought that was a very interesting statement that you wrote or made in the book, because I've felt like when I haven't gone with my gut feeling am I experiencing somebody else's reality? But if I would have went with my gut feeling, and when I do, is that me creating my reality? And
think about it for a minute. What took you out of your gut feeling? It was trying to put yourself in the seat of the person that made you trigger it in the first place. That's literally removing you from yourself. Now, what happens when we ignore this gut feeling? That gut feeling told you when you met that guy that he probably wasn't the best character, and then he ended up sleeping with your girlfriend. That gut feeling told you that that girl that you met, she probably wasn't the one to take home, but now your watch is missing. That gut feeling, you get what I'm saying? Like, people accept that they have gut feelings all the time, but they also ignore it at the same time. It's there for a reason. People ignore this, but That's your body's ability to read energy. That's a physical response to an energy that's coming around it. That gut feeling that you have that's another energy entering into your toroidal field, into your space, into your energy field. And that's your mashing with that does not mix for some reason. And because it doesn't mix, there's energy that's being drawn that's coming from different places. And it's starting to feed that adrenaline that's starting to come is coming from what? The feeling of that energy just not meshing correctly. It's making you, just their presence alone makes you feel uneasy, which elicits an emotional response. That's your warning system. A lot of people have been, oh, I'm glad that you brought this up. All right. I'm going to give an example of this that somebody gave me. It is a conversation I had with somebody a couple of years back that was astral projecting, as they call it, which is not what you think it is. That's you creating and going and exploring things. Funny thing about this is that there's things that are created purely out of anguish, creatures and things that you'll create that are like beings for you to interact with, to understand things that you haven't quite grasped that you can understand already. So you have to have some type of construct in order to explain it to you, right? There's teaching things. There's things that you create out of fear. There's things that you create out of happiness. Each one of your emotions creates a different kind of character. Same thing as you see with the hieroglyphs and stuff, like all the different body parts being different characters that have different characteristics and shit. It's the same exact thing. And so this guy was like explaining to me that he was like astral projecting, that he was coming across these entities. He would feel himself try to stop like going near them and things like that, but then try to force himself to. And then I would be like, yeah, but what happens when you did that? Because I understand that's a raw emotion of yours. That's something that you're going to have to battle and deal with. You're not supposed to make friends with everything that you create. Everything that you create isn't there to be friends with. Some things are there for you to destroy the thing that's bothering you. Sometimes something will bother you so much that you'll create a creature that you can literally destroy to destroy that memory for yourself. But people take it on as, oh, there's this monster in there that's coming to attack. No, you made that. You made that for you to be able to physically deal with something that you couldn't deal with mentally. So now you have a physical thing that you can do to tear into it so that you can actually handle it for yourself. A lot of people have a hard time grasping that. Like they'll get very aggravated. No, you really met you. You really met you. Like no matter whether you want to look at it from the spiritual aspect or you want to look at it from a psychological aspect, no matter which way you want to look at it, if you're a part of everything and everything's a part of you, then you're a part of everything. So you can't even tell me that I'm wrong when I'm telling you that you created you in that moment. Because what else can you create besides more different variations and versions of yourself? This lighter is no different a version of me than I am. They've proven that every atom has its own sentience. So you can't tell me that I'm wrong when I tell you that you're dealing with yourself when you're doing these things. You're just making something that you can deal with. But that's not the point. The thing is, this guy tries to convince himself that he's okay to go deal with that. There's a part of him that's telling him, look, don't deal with this being, don't deal with this creature. And he convinces himself that he does want to. And what happens? When he deals with it in his astral, as you want to take it, what he just dove into was something very traumatic for himself that he was supposed to break and destroy or stay away from. Something that he could keep away from. You could physically make a distance from something if you make it physical. You can put it at a distance, which will literally put it out of your mind. So you can create physical in the mental in order to accomplish things that you want to do mentally. That's how you're supposed to communicate with your mind anyway, is mentally. It's creating images. That's how you talk to your mind for real. Thing is that he would go and interact with this shit. And I was like, so what happened next? Let me guess. You interacted with it. And then what? You felt like you brought it back here with you? He was like, yeah. I was like, then you what? You got depressed. You got upset. You were fucked up for months on end and shit. Like, he was like, yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you went and interacted with something that you weren't supposed to interact with. You tried to override. See, he tried to override the gut. He had that gut feeling. Whether you're in this physical right now, whether you're in the 3D, whether you're in the 4D or the 5D, makes no difference. You always have that gut feeling with you. It doesn't matter. When you're supposedly dreaming and you're interacting with things, you have a gut feeling. When you're around something you shouldn't be, when you're around something that's good, you understand? So if that carries on both physical and to the non-physical, then that's a real thing that you have. And that's something that a lot of people ignore and a lot of people don't listen to. And And every time that they ignore it and every time that they don't listen to it, something bad happens. But the thing is, that's because we're now programmed. We're now programmed to have a bad result. You're now programmed to have a bad result for ignoring your gut feeling, right? But there is no overriding it. It's going to be there. But the thing is now the gut has been hyperactivated because everybody's running off of fear-based tactics right now. That's what the mind is basically running off of, is fear-based instead of love-based. And people wake up, they're worried about getting to work on time. When they're worried about getting work on time, they're worried about whether they cut their lights off. When they're worried about let the cuts off, did I lock the door? Is the house going to get robbed? Is somebody going to steal my car while I'm at work? Is the boss going to yell at me? Am I going to get to my break on time? Everybody's stuck in a constant state of what if fucks. They're basically what if fucks. And it's keeping everybody stuck in this fear mode. All right, everybody's stuck in this fear mode. So it's very important for you to be able to remove yourself from that. Because if you can't, then you're just going to keep replaying all these fucked up scenarios over and over again. Why? Because we don't accept how much we're actually accepting them and how much we're creating them. And so when we ignore our gut feelings, we're basically allowing something to take place that shouldn't be taking place. Your gut tells you you're probably going to have to punch this dude in the face. It does. You're probably going to have to punch this dude in the face. But then your mind tells you if you do that, he's probably going to hit you back. Maybe you should just let that slide.
Or sometimes you're like, if I do hit this dude, I'm probably going to wind up going to jail.
See how there's all these programmed consequences that are stopping you from doing what's right? You might be in a situation that calls for it. Bro, think about it. How many times have you let somebody slide? I've let people slide 1,000,000 times. One, because the stuff that I know gives me a little bit of an advantage over the average person. So I don't really feel it necessary for me to even get in a fight with somebody physically. But like, how many times have you let somebody slide on something like that and didn't take that moment to realize that in that moment you would have wanted somebody to correct you or to talk to you to see what it really was that was fucking you up? Because we only deal with the outlash, but nobody addresses where it bruised from, what stemmed it in the first place. If we can get to what stemmed it, maybe we can stop that outlash when it happened. See, I take each moment like it happens to me in order for me to stop it before it goes to somebody else. That's how I look at it. What can I do to make sure that this doesn't replay? Because it's all about building that better world. You can't do that without being the example. Now, what type of example are you going to lead? Yeah, that situation might have called for you to punch that dude in the face, but you could have also talked to him. And maybe not even had to punch him in the face, but still got across the same scenario. Or maybe just gave them the moment that they needed to release it verbally to get it out of their system.
And by the way, people on TikTok, if you want to get his book, The Kingdome, go to his page, The Book of Johnson.
Book is $12, but the folder is still $25 because the folder's got the second book in it as well now for people to follow along for the live teachings.
So there you go. The second one will give you the second book, as well as other PDF that he provides information on. And if you just want to get the book, it's $12, and that's on Amazon, but they can go onto your link to get it. Now, let's go talk about deprogramming, right? This sounds all great, but how do we actually make this happen? How do we transition from being the sole controller of our experiences where nothing else interferes with how we create our reality? We are in control of everything, right? Now, you hear a lot of these personal development people say, hey, law of attraction and thoughts become things and all this other stuff. And it sounds great. But then people go to these seminars like, what's his name? The real famous guy, Tony Robbins. It's like people spend thousands of dollars to go to his seminars. And then they wind up going again and again, but not in their lives.
I don't want you to need me. This is about you. Because the more I make it so that you understand and grow within yourself, the better it makes it for me anyway. Because you're just an extension of me. So it only makes sense for me to try to fuel you more and to make you understand how much it is and how to gain control of that. The deprogramming starts with the first chapter with the maxims of the human experience. That's one of the major parts of the deprogramming. Here, let me see if I can bring that up.
You put the chapter for deprogram, you said a solution to the complex implication of negativity, a rewrite to a forced perception through false realities.
Yeah. Everybody's been forced into a specific reality by what they've chosen to accept. And that reality that everybody's accepted is fear-based. It's based on negativities and it's based on possibilities of negativities. This is the same reason why somebody will work the same job they don't like for a long period of time and they'll never quit it. They might get fired from it eventually, but they won't quit it because they'll be afraid of the consequence of quitting it instead of moving forward like they really want to. And that's because they've been programmed to accept all of these negatives as warnings. Everybody takes these negative scenarios as warnings, but you're not realizing these are scenarios you're creating. So if you can create all these negative scenarios, guess what? You can also say, okay, that's an option, but this is also an option too. And you can also create positive scenarios to go along with those negatives and choose those scenarios to follow through. You don't have to accept those negatives.
A lot of it too is that when we're in those positions, I've been in these positions when I was a lot younger, when I actually worked for other people, is I knew I didn't want to be there, but I wasn't envisioning a reality of how it would be not to be there because I was too concerned of what I was going to lose if I left the job. So I went into that phase thought, okay, if I quit this job, how am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to pay for my car? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But I'm not actually creating a reality of what is it going to look like when I quit my job and what exactly am I going to attain and get and have in my life to replace what I let go of and continue on. But we don't think like that.
That's that negativity that you got programmed in though. Because look, I'll explain it to you exactly how it happens, right? And this is something that I do to test people on lives so that they can understand this for themselves. The moment that you have that great thought of, oh, you know what? I could do this real quick and I would blow up and this would get me out of this. Immediately right after having it, you go right down the path of, but if I did that also, I'll lose this. I'll probably lose this. This might break. And then that's where you stop. And then all you focus on is the loss part of it. Instead of going back to that part of, oh, I could do this. If I did it, you get stuck in this loss part of it because everybody's hyper focused on the negative shit right now. Everybody's trained to focus on that negative stuff and take that as like a warning or something that's put there to help you avoid fucking something up, but that's not true. Because there's a difference. This isn't something you feel in your gut. My gut feeling. This is something that's in your mind. There's no feeling. There's no dropping, sinking feeling that comes with this because it's false. Once again, that gut feeling that everybody ignores. There's no verification by your gut that this feeling of these possible scenarios is real for you. There's no verification of it in that moment, but your gut has gotten you out of real moments. But your gut doesn't tell you that there's something wrong with these moments, but we buy into them. You just accepted a reality that you created as being the result instead of deciding that wasn't the reality that you were going to accept. Because you saw those good things first. You saw all the good things, all the benefits, and it was a part of your reality for that fleeting moment. That was a literal, real part of your reality. You felt it. Your whole body fucking felt energetic for a second. You were super excited. It felt like it truly existed to you, and then you just fucking dismissed it. You're like, nah, wait a minute. Nah. You just accepted the fact that you can't have that as your reality. And no matter how much you ask for it afterwards, all you're doing is solidifying that you don't accept that as being your truth. Every time that you have to ask for it. That's why this whole thing about manifesting is completely false doctrine. Bullshit. It's utter lies. Because they're telling you, oh, you got to write it down in order to manifest it. No, writing things down only programs. That's all it is. That's your DOS program. Commanding your mind to do things you do with images. You have to be able to see the thing in order to command your mind what you want. So if you can't see it in your head, that's because you know that you don't want it. That's why you can't see it there. Everything that you have that's around you in your life, you saw in your head. That's how you knew that you were getting it.
Hold it in your hand. Absolutely.
Right?
The power.
Exactly. So if you can't see it in your head, you're never going to be able to have it. That's not going to work for you. You have to be able to see it. A lot of us say that we want these futures. Oh, I want to be a millionaire and but you don't see that in your future.
You didn't envision.
You don't see it. You don't accept that as your future. You've decided that it's impossible for you to get there. See, they've got people solidifying their stuckness with these ideas of manifestation that they're passing around because you've been doing it your whole entire life. So what do you mean that you have to do something that you're already doing? That's telling yourself not to do it. Then when you're writing something down, oh, I want this and I want this and I want this, all you're doing is telling yourself that you don't have this. How can you not have this if you have everything and you're a part of everything? That's a fallacy. That's a fucking subconscious programming right there. That's subconsciously programming you never to get it. All these things that they're teaching people how not to get the shit that they're after. That's literally what they're teaching them because they're not addressing the subconscious. They're only addressing the conscious. Yes, you wrote it down. Now you say that you believe that's in your future, but then you go back and read that you wrote it down, reminding yourself that you don't have it. Every time you're just solidifying it even further that you don't have it. What happens? They never get it. So what happens? They go to the seminar again. I must have missed it the first time.
How about this, though? How about this one? I want to get your thoughts on this. We're going to talk about how all programming begins with 369. When you actually write something down and you put the thought out there and you actually get it and you receive exactly what you wrote down and wanted, but then you don't even know how to deal with it once you get it. When you don't actually embrace what you want. Where do you think that comes from?
Sometimes you'll get things because you don't want it. And it's specifically because of the fact that you don't really want it, that you get it. So everybody's doing the 369 method. They're writing the stuff down that they want, right? Now, funny thing about this is we all have examples of people that got everything that they wanted, but they don't seem happy at all. They seem miserable as fuck. Look at all the rich people. Everybody that's rich, supposedly, they have money to buy everything that they could possibly want. Now,
But
although
fulfilled.
every once in a while you see a fake video where they seem like they're having a good time and stuff like that, but 9 out of 10 times you'll see them stressed out. You pay attention to what's really going on in their lives. Everybody's stressed out. They're bored. They're dull. Everything's worthless to them now because they have so much worth, right? So they have no enjoyment left. There's nothing for them to enjoy because everything is at their access. There's no earn involved in it. There's no gathering. There's no gratitude for achievement. There's nothing because it's all there for them. So that's when they go from physical things, they go from objects to beings and things that have life and shit like that. That's where the shift comes from because there's nothing else to play with. That's the only thing that they can't buy necessarily. You get what I'm saying? That's why they end up going miserable and doing horrendous shit is because there's nothing else to do because they've already got everything else. So meanwhile, everybody is sitting around convincing themselves that they want the same misery that they got. Make it make sense. People say here, okay, people say they want $1 million. You know why they never get the $1 million? They get it, but it takes them probably like 20 years to get it. They just don't realize that they got it over that 20 years. They got what they asked for. It just took 20 years for them to get it. But the thing is that it was never the money that they were after. Was it? No, it was what they could get with the money. So are you going to get the money when you ask for the money? No, you're not going to get the money. Not because that's not what you're after. You're going to get stuff. You might have got $1 million worth of stuff, but you didn't even appreciate it because you got the thing that you were going to get with that $1 million. You just didn't realize it, but you got so hung up on waiting on that $1 million that you couldn't accept the thing that you got, but you got what you were really after. Hence, just what you're talking about. You got the thing that you were after, but you didn't know how to enjoy it.
Or embrace it, right? You got it, and now you don't, it's like you're not accepting it into your life.
None of it was what you wanted in the first place.
Now, can you elaborate? Because I'm thinking when somebody does want something and they get it, why wouldn't they want it in the first place if that's what they asked for?
Because you never enjoy it more than the first moment.
It's like how it reminds me of that movie, Devil's Advocate. It's one of my favorite movies with Al Pacino and Keanu Reeves. When he says, you want to feel that high that you get from your first line of cocaine, and then it's just from there.
That's how everything is. You're going to tell me that you can have more fun with something in the physical than you can have in your place of creation. You're never going to enjoy it as much as you did when it was in your mind. And you decided you wanted it in that moment. That's when you actually had it. You already had it. That's what made you want to keep it. That's what made you want to get a physical representation of it, was the fact that you already had it. But you already had the best out of it. Then you chase it in the physical, you get it in the physical, and then you do all of these things to try to make it equal up to what it is that you had in your head. It never does. That's why it ends up just sitting there collecting shit after a while, like everything else.
What are your thoughts about that when it comes to relationships? Like when it comes with people, like Do you think that follows the same? Because let's say you want to have a certain man or a certain woman in your life, and you get that type of woman, but you don't know how to embrace it. You think that falls under the same guidelines? Because you're dealing with...
You're not really looking for, how can I explain this? You're looking for love in all the wrong places.
You're not looking for love from within yourself, is what you're saying?
Right. Like, people try to compensate the lack of love they have for themselves in somebody else seeing it in them where they can't.
Oh boy. What else?
The person that you get with is the person that recognizes the things that you don't.
And they see things that you may not see in yourself.
Mm-hmm. Now, the problem with this is that they'll see the side of you that you want to see, but then sometimes you get upset with them for not seeing you for who you are.
Oh, yeah, I know how that feels.
But at the same time, the very thing that brought you to them was the fact that they saw more in you than what you had in the first place. It's a teetering thing, because the very thing that you are drawn to the most about them is also the very thing that will become the largest problem if you allow it to. It all depends on how you allow it to unfold. You always remember that the thing that you love about them is the fact that they see more in you, then you'll be more accepting of it. But if you're bothered by the fact that you can't match up to the person that they want you to be, then you're always going to see a problem with their wanting more out of you. Accepting that they see better in you and just allowing that to motivate you without putting a stipulation of you have to become this, right? Because you don't have to do shit. If you try to make it so that you have to do it, then it becomes something that you no longer enjoy, because then it's a job.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Absolutely right. And now it doesn't flow freely. It becomes that path of resistance.
Right. And see, this is what I tell people is it's okay to see more than what you see in somebody, right? But you always have to accept them for who they are, because by wanting them to become somebody that you see, you don't know who else is going to come with that personality. You don't know what you'd be pushing them into creating when you're doing this. So you have to be very mindful of the direction that you think that you're steering somebody, because you don't know the result that's going to yield. You're better off just accepting them how they are. And if you can't, it's really something in yourself that you don't accept, because there's nothing that they were doing before you decided that you wanted to be with them that made you feel that way. So everything that they've done afterwards is now your decision as to whether it's something worth sticking out or not.
I wanted, for the people that are going to be tuning into this on the podcast, this is a pre-recorded episode. I'm interviewing Booker Johnson, his book called The Kingdome. He said, all programming begins with 369, eyes, ears, mouth, or understanding. All three are the keys to the universe. As stated by Nikola Tesla, 369 contains the keys to the universe. I'm learning this more and more with everything I do. I keep a sequence of 369 even when I do these lives, and it works out so well. It says the trifecta is the shortest distance to the most basic of basis of a complete cycle. The past, present, future, reality, imagination, existence, sight, sound, thought, land, air, water. All exist as one. Without the other, none can complete. All work is in unison. The key is first in shaping the subconscious. What has been programmed must be reprogrammed after deprogramming. So let's talk about that, because I've gone through these processes already. This is why I'm able to be where I'm at with my mind and my heart and my body. And I'm still getting better at it, right? It's still a journey, but I'm so much better at it. And I'm so much more conscious of deprogramming and breaking a lot of cognitive dissonance that we hold on to shit that doesn't serve us anymore. And that's why I don't like belief system, because I feel like having a belief system creates limitations for me. So the more I don't have a belief system, I can just know what I know when I come to know it, when it's meant to be known. And there's so much that I don't know yet. But I've let go of beliefs because there's so many lies and there's so much to question. So I believe nothing. Is that which I know and that what I don't know. And what I don't know doesn't serve me anything right now because I don't know it yet. Can we talk more about how do we go about deprogramming and then knowing when something's programmed so now we can reprogram ourselves with the information or knowledge that we want to hold on to?
Okay, something that I was going over with one of my exes. She had a lot of trauma that she considered to be trauma in her past. Because she believed it to be trauma in her past and because she reinforced it with these ideas of trauma, it became the trauma of her present. By believing the things that happened to you in your past were traumatic experiences, you're then commanding yourself to have a certain type of response to these things when you remember them, when you think of them, which is going to dictate the outcome of them being present in your present, right? And so by understanding this, we know that you want to reprogram this. The way that you reprogram this is by the commands that you give to your mind. You can command your mind. All you have to do is write things down and read it back to yourself. This is the 369. It's reading it, which makes it so that you see it, you hear it, and you're writing it. That's an action, that's a vibration, and that's a frequency. That's the cause and the effect, like all three of the things that you need. Because 369, the keys of 369, what is 3? 3 is vibration. Everything's always constantly moving. What is 6? 6 is the cause and the effect. So what is 9? 9 being the universe itself, which is the cause and the effect of the 3 and the 6. Because when you have the vibration, then you have the cause and the effect of that vibration, you then have the creation. That's the 9. So 369 is simply the vibration and the creation. And understanding this, you can apply this with your reading and writing on how to reprogram things. Say you're traumatized by a certain experience, but you want to write it down. This does not bother me. There's nothing about this that I haven't learned from. I accept that I've gone through this and I no longer need to replay this. And then you write that down, and then you write it down a second time, and you read it back to yourself a second time. Then you write it down a third time, and you read it back to yourself a third time. When you write it the second time, you read both the first and the second one. When you write it the third time, you read all three of them. And you do that each time, because the first time that you write it down, you're what? You're learning it as you're writing it. The second time that you're writing it down, you're reading it while you're writing it. By the third time that you're writing it down, it's now almost completely in your mind as you're writing it down. So you're now just what? Repeating it into the subconscious. So it goes from being something that is a conscious thought to a repeat of it into a programming. That's the 369, because you're reading it what? You're reading it 9 times. The first one, then the 2, it makes the 3. Then you're reading it again. And it's all just replaying over and over and over again each time that you do this. And so if you do that once a week, you just write that same thing down, that same programming. By the time the next month comes around, you'll find that's something that's no longer there. Because every 28 days, your body recreates all the DNA and all the cells and all the blood inside of it. So it resets itself. And as long as you're having positive thoughts during that time and eating correctly, you get the energy that's necessary in order to reproduce the DNA that's structured in the body, which changes the water, which changes the memory. It's like a little circle of life, basically. So you program it by writing it. That's how you program your subconscious, is the writing. That's why when you went to school, you what? You read it, you wrote it, and then you spoke it. They always had you do it in 3. Same thing with music. When you're listening to music, what's the part of the music that keeps you coming back? The hook. Why is it called the hook? Because it plays 3 times. When you hear it 3 times, what do? You hear it, you sing it. So you're now hearing it, you're voicing it, and you're thinking about it. It's all about the 3. And you do it 3 times. Everything is done 3 and 3 that makes it stick. That's why music sticks in your head so heavy. They're using the same process.
That's absolutely true. It's interesting. You wrote an example here. You said, we're going to say it 3 times here. And by the way, anybody that just came into the live, we're interviewing the Book of Johnson, and we're going over his book called The Kingdome. So you wrote, I am successful and gain each maxim once the learned lesson is experienced. I have never failed. I am successful and gain each maxim once the learned lesson is experienced. I have never failed. Why you chose that particular affirmation, or why did you write that down or choose to use that as an example?
Because that has something to do with the book. Because when you're writing that, you're programming your mind to think about the maxims. Subconsciously, you just programmed your mind to pay attention to the maxims, which means that when you run into the situations, your mind is going to automatically revert you back to this, which is going to remind you of the lesson that you learned for each one of the maxims. And that's going to help it so that you're now pulling yourself out of each one of those moments when you get caught up in your loss, when you're getting caught up in failure, when you're getting caught up in anger, when you're getting caught up in vulnerability, when you're getting caught up in feeling dead inside, when you're getting caught up on feeling weighted down by something. All of these things, if you remember the maxims and they're, oh yeah, I feel weighted down by this because I love it so much. Let me just enjoy the fact that it brought me that weight real quick so that I can keep moving. That just verifies. Now the very things that typically bother you about something can become the thing that fuel you for it. Because now it's just a validation of love. Now,
so the last line was, once it says, I am successful and gain each maxim once the learned lesson is experienced, I have never failed. The last part is I have never failed.
The reason it's in there is because people need to be reinforced that there is no failure. There's no such thing as failure. Failure is just learning that there's an alternate reality that you could possibly exist in. Because every time that you think that you failed at something, you didn't fail at it. You chose that there was something better that you would possibly be doing at that time. So you didn't fail at the thing that you left behind. So you need to accept the fact that you left it behind because you've already completed everything that was needed in the maxim. That's why you didn't stick with it, because it was already done. You're not supposed to feel bad for moving forward. You're supposed to reward yourself. You're supposed to accept the fact that you're moving forward. But most of the time, people attack themselves thinking that they failed at something else. There's nothing that you fail at. You just do what you want.
I think that has a lot to do with people always associate failure as not gaining something, not realizing that in not achieving what they thought they wanted to, there is something gained from it. And it reminds me of Thomas Edison when he was interviewed and he figured out how to put the light bulb together. And they asked him, why did you keep going? How did you keep going if you failed 2,000 times? And he said, I didn't fail 2,000 times. I just figured out 2,000 ways on how not to make a light bulb.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And think about how much he learned in those things that he did that didn't work out in what he wanted to achieve, but still gained something else from it, from that particular experience that would have been looked at as a failure, but it's actually a gain. Right? It's a lesson. Like my friend who owns a farm, he said, I take my L's as lessons. There's no losses. There's only lessons to be learned. Mm-hmm. And I think that writing it down like this, it really ingrains into the spirit, right? How you talk about the spear being the vertebrae, the spinal cord, going into the pelvic being the actual spear. And what's interesting is that when he's giving this breakdown, you can see how it all ties in, because the vertebrae going into the pelvic bone is exactly shaped like a spear, like an arrow. What's interesting about this, I've just come to the realization, is that just writing something as simple as I have never failed and reading it, writing it, ingraining it into spirit, it now becomes you. Just like when I was saying earlier, I've been saying for years, I don't get sick. And I know this to be true. And the more I hold on that vibration of knowing and not doubting, not even a slightest bit, that becomes my reality. A reality where there is no sickness. Sickness is not even in my vernacular when I'm speaking. The only time I even hear sickness is when I'm seeing other people go through it. So let's talk more about this deprogramming process, because I want to see what suggestions can you give people that actually want to deprogram? What's one of the most important things, or if you would say the three top things that they have to put into practice to go through the deprogramming process?
I think the hardest part that people have in this is accepting how much things are really affected by their every action and their lack of action. The hardest part about the deprogramming is first accepting how much of this really does weigh in on your own. A lot of people seem to understand it, but at the same time don't act on it. It's like they're still stuck and still stagnant and still worried about moving forward. And it's interesting to see because I know everybody wants to move forward, but it's like there's just this roadblock of programming. It's just you have to do the deprogramming. That's why all the chapters that come after the deprogramming, it's straight ego, death, failure, loss. All of these are the things that people deal with the most, right? And so that's why those are the next chapters, is because these are the things that people have been given the most destructive ideas about and the things that keep them from moving forward. These are the things that build fear. And it's the inability to accept that there's nothing to be afraid of that keeps people from doing anything, but there is nothing to be afraid of. Everybody's worried about dying. You've seen it happen around you a million times, but has it happened to you? Let me repeat that again. It's happened billions of times. You've seen all kinds of examples of it. You've seen bugs die. You've seen people die. You've seen animals die. You've seen everything die, but you're still here. But yet there's a fear of a consequence of something. But everything tells you that everything else died. They try to convince you that you die, but you're not dying. So far, you haven't died.
You're still here.
Because it doesn't exist without you.
So is there anything such as death at all? Is something really dying, or it just doesn't exist with your reality anymore? That's what the concept of how energy never dies.
Just because your thought goes away, is it not a thought anymore? No, you can always bring that back.
Exactly. When I was 20 years old, I heard a nurse, this guy I used to work at this homeless shelter, and he was telling me how ego stands for edging God out. And I thought that was a pretty profound statement at the time. But now, when I read your book, I was like, emotion grown outcomes? I said, holy shit, emotion grown outcomes. Blew my mind, bro. Blew my mind.
That's all. Think about it. Like that's all that the ego is. There's an outcome that comes out of an emotion, but the ego is just the driving force. There's no emotion that's tied with ego. Ego, like love, brings out a lot of things, but you can't say that it is those things because it can't be encased in one thing. Ego can make you prideful. Ego can make you humble. Your ego will make you succeed, and your ego can also bring you failure. It can also stop you from things. Which I guess isn't failure necessarily, but like your ego can stop you from making progress because you feel like, oh, I'm too. Like everybody looks at ego as the emotional response, the outcome of the emotional response. The ego simply gives you the knowing of what you're capable of. Now, you can be prideful off of knowing that, which can lead you to being rude, which can lead you to looking down on people and everything. But the ego isn't the thing that gave you that response. It was the pride. That's the emotional response to knowing that you know something. So the ego isn't what everybody paints it out to be. Without your ego, you say you made it a certain level in school. Would you have made it that far in school if you didn't feel like it was like you could? No, you wouldn't have. Your ego made you do that. Would you feel compelled to talk to people right now? No, you wouldn't, because your ego is what makes you do that. And that's not a pride thing. That's the driving force behind your purpose.
It's the force that gives you confidence and courage to do something.
Right. Without it, you would do nothing. So why is everybody painting the ego as something that's a bad thing? See, they've got you working against your self-confidence. Your ego gives you confidence, but then you call it pride and it becomes a problem.
And I think what a lot of too is the creation of the false ego, where people create this false identity of the ego, not embracing the ego for what it's there for. They look at it from a negative perspective, and that's the false ego. And that's what really drives a lot of behaviors that are detrimental to the human being that's operating in that falsehood.
Now, see,
of the stuff.
The way that I put these chapters together give you a new way to view the things that they're about. And from that, you can recognize where your problems come from. As we address these different views on these things, then you can be like, oh, you know what? That's the thing that has to do with me. Then you go back to this deprogramming. That's when you start writing your stuff down, is after you read the chapters that come after, because before you do it, you might be a little hazy on where you need it. But one of these subjects is going to be like, oh, you know what? That's where this comes from. And then you know exactly what you need to rewrite. Because then it reminds you of that memory with that feeling, with that emotion that's tied to that moment. And then you can say, all right, from that memory, I learned this, and I don't need to know this because I did this, and I'm done with that. So let's get that out of there.
Facts, brother. Yes, you set that spot on, because that's where trauma is. Trauma is just our perception of an experience that didn't make us feel good, but we didn't feel good from the experience. And we hold on to that not feeling good, and then it continues to perpetuate throughout our lives until we deal with, just like how you explained it. When we recognize that's what it is, whether it's a feeling of abandonment, whether it's SA, whether it's physical abuse, whether it's mental abuse, you have to realize, okay, this is the perception I had of that experience. Now I have to let it go because I know it doesn't serve me in the present. That's something that happened years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, whenever. But the moment you can recognize it and say, you know what? That feeling I'd had does not have to be attached to anything I'm doing now, because how it made me feel was just an experience. It's nothing that has to be relived. The only person that's making it relive it is myself.
People as accepting the experience.
Yeah, what it is. And then letting it go. And knowing that experience actually has brought something good in your life, because without it, you wouldn't have known that it exists and how to deal with it and how to recognize it. Or maybe give advice to somebody else on how to deal with it that is a little bit lost on that experience and feeling a certain type of way, or feeling some insecurity or some lack. And you can give them some, or like what you're doing with the book, right? You're letting them know, hey, you don't have to hold on to those emotions, because that emotion was just an experience.
Yeah.
If it doesn't serve you well, why hold on to it? Well, some people
don't get. This is where a lot of people get fucked up. There's certain building blocks for each of us. There's certain things that we go through that we re-experience over and over again in our lives when we start to doubt ourselves. And a lot of people get, all right, what's a good scenario to pick? And by the way, I end up on the streets a lot, consistently. I'll be doing fine, and then all of a sudden, everything will hit a reset on me, and I'll be homeless again, and I'll have to start from scratch all over again. Now, this has became shorter each time because of how much I know now that things, that matter of fact, has gotten to the point to where I don't even make it to the streets anymore. It's very interesting. See, the thing is that I've come to accept is the fact that each of us has something in our path that makes us stronger. And that something in our path that makes us stronger is the one thing that the universe has as a go-to whenever we start to question, and whenever we get into that zone of, is it worth it? Or like when things start crumbling around you and shit like that, and things start not going the way that you want, there's always that one thing. For some people, it was drugs. For some people, it's being homeless. For some people, it's losing a relationship. For some people, it's like getting into it with a family member. For some people, like, you understand, like everybody has that one thing. Everybody has that one thing that keeps reoccurring in their life. Every time that things start to seem to go bad, they have that one go-to moment that reoccurs every single time things start to go bad. It's just this reminder of this thing, right? The reason behind that is because there's certain things that we each have to triumph over when we need to get stronger, right? And that one key scenario and one key situation is the same thing that we go through each time that things get to a point to where it feels like it's out of control again. Because it's the only thing that the universe knows how to give you in order to rebuild your confidence in yourself. So, like, for me, it'll be losing my place. And then as I'm losing my place, it'll be getting into a new place, which rebuilds the confidence, and that reassures me that everything's in my control and everything's in my hands. Now, how has this grown over the time? When I was young, and I accepted that I had to go through chaos before things got better for me, I would end up homeless consistently, and I would be homeless for long durations of time. Now, whenever I'm about to have a big change, I end up getting threatened with being homeless and then having something else presented to me before I even make it to the streets. Why? Because I instantly know as soon as things look like or give that feeling of it's going bad, that it's just a change that's coming. And I instantly already know that something even better is coming every single time. And so before it even gets to the point of drowning myself in, oh shit, here we go. Now it's to the point to where the thing now presents itself before I even get to that point. Just because of the fact that I've gone through it enough times that acknowledged it and understood it as a building point, that now it is literally nothing but an advancement move every single time that's accepted, instead of something that I fight and draw out longer and end up getting stuck in.
And that's going on the path of least resistance. You're not resisting the changes that are coming into your life. You're just accepting. You're embracing instead of rejecting it and causing the resistance to create conflict that results to other things going wrong, because now you're thinking in a lack mentality, you're thinking scared, you're thinking doubt, and all these other low vibrations that are not going to support what's actually happening for you. It's happening to you because it's happening for you. Everything. You have chapter 5. It's chapter 5 is called Pain. And you wrote program attachment implying.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that for the listeners?
Where does pain come from? Pain comes from this idea of attachment, but truly you're attached to nothing outside of your ideas. And so the pain that comes with the attachment is a false idea in itself, because that just means that you didn't accept that it was really a part of you, because you can't lose something that's a part of you. So the very pain that you feel is from a loss of something, but there's nothing that you've lost. So why do you feel the pain in the first place? How does that even make sense? And why are you even allowing that to be something in your existence in the first place? If anything, it should be a moment of, there should be like a couple seconds of pain and then, oh, great, I get to feel this. Because all it is validation of how real it was for you. How else would you know that he really went through it if you didn't feel it? Why even allow yourself to be in something that you would deem to be a negative result of something when really it's always going to be a positive?
Something to think about.
Because, when you love something, everything that you love comes with pain. There's nothing there you can't escape that's guaranteed, because everything that you love comes with a weight and a burden, no matter what it is, because it's your decision that makes that love real for you. And it's your acceptance of it that makes it real for you, which means that it comes with the responsibility of that love. Now, as you can see by the wheel, love brings all kinds of shit. It brings all of it with it every single time. You can't love something and avoid anything that's in that wheel. You have to go through all of those things on that wheel in order to fully experience that thing. So once you're done with this experience, you're done with it. And a lot of people have a hard time accepting that. And that's where this pain comes from. A lot of people have a problem with moving on and things like that. We all get stuck on it. I still get stuck on that to this day sometimes. It takes me a couple days. But even that's getting shorter and shorter, right? But yeah, so it's like the pain that we feel having to deal with something that we think that we have is just something that we think that we have. So if it's just something that you think that you have, then why is there a pain necessary? What are you not enjoying in the moment that you're choosing to be in pain? What are you ignoring? Because you have to ignore a whole bunch of shit in order to be in pain about something. That's a choice.
Program attachment implying need. It's good not to be attached to things.
No, it's okay to get attached to things. There's nothing wrong with being attached to things. You're attached to everything. You should be able to attach to things. That's what you're here to do. That's how you gain experience.
How does that relate to the attachment?
Yeah,
implying
you don't need any of these things.
You want them, right? You want those things. It doesn't.
You don't need them. Everything that you thought that you needed was now sitting around your house collecting dust.
Oh, true. I got a lot of things like that. I got clothes, man, that I don't even wear, bro.
It's everything until somebody tries to take it from you. And then all of a sudden, it's mine.
Yeah.
And it's important again.
That's like
you're programmed to be attached to it.
It's so funny you say that because even with my daughter, when she was little, she wouldn't play with certain toys. But if another kid touched that toy, oh, it's mine. That's my toy. She didn't want them playing with it. But if you haven't even played with that toy for 6 months, now another kid wants to play with that toy. And now it has value to you. Yeah. I think that the people that are listening definitely get this book because it helps you to start really critically thinking about this experience that we call life. And are you really in control of it, or is somebody else controlling for you? And you're just running off the consciousness, what I like to call robot consciousness. I'm going to go back to that love and hate wheel that you got behind you, but I want to touch on some other things before we go to that, because that's in the book. Loss is learned, obsessive, subjective separation. Whoa.
Yeah.
Let's talk
about what is it, right? It's the same thing as pain, right? You learn that you gained something when gain is nothing but something that's of the thought, right? You can't physically gain anything. You can't. You can have something around you, but you can't gain it. It never attaches itself to you. So just think about that for a minute. If you never really gain anything, except for the thought of you gaining it, then how do you lose it? And why are you obsessing over it? That's the question that you should be asking yourself is, why are you obsessing over something that you never really had in the first place? You don't operate your own body. The closest thing that you can have to having something is eating or drinking something. But even eating or drinking something doesn't give it to you because you don't control your body. Your body operates on its own. Those organs operate independently. There's nobody in control. You're not in control of that. Your body got it, but you didn't. You don't gain anything ever. Never. It's impossible. You're nothing but a spark in the eyeball in the mirror.
Right. And I thought about being the observer. How you're just really observing everything. So it's not even like this thing that's happening is not happening to you. It's happening to the image and the idea that you created for it to happen in the first place. Even down to the body. You chose to have this body for it to have an experience, but you're observing its experience. You're not going through the true etherical light being that you are of existence. Is observing all of it.
Right.
This is just an illusion that you can create anything you want out of it. The illusion can be whatever you want it to be. There's a line here that says the second effect of love, the idea of loss, a lie. The first one was to question what exists in the first place, even to begin to think if one can lose. Is this concept even possible? Why does it gain such a stranglehold on the breath of life? What have you lost if all things are made of one thing? And powerful statement there, because if loss is even a real capability or a subjectional truth forced into the mind by programming of love's ever-changing, growing fruition.
Well, the only thing that you can lose is the decision to be bonded to something. Outside of that, you can't lose anything else because outside of that, nothing else is yours. There's nothing that just because I have this sign in my hand, this is private property. Now, technically, I have that. But at the same time, I don't. If anything, I don't possess that. That thing possesses me. The reason that thing possesses me is because that thing doesn't fucking care what I do with it. It has no thoughts of where I put it. It has no thoughts of whether I lose it, whether I hang it up, whether I throw it in the garbage. It has no thoughts about that whatsoever, however. I have a thought as to what happens with that thing that I think that I owns me. Because I worry about what's going to happen to that thing. I worry about what it's going to do. I worry about whether I'm going to lose it or not. I worry about the consequence of it not being hung up. I worry about the kind of power that it has when it is hung up. You get what I'm saying? That's all on me. That's on me. I have a loss that is programmed to this because I have decided that's something that I own. That thing that I own has no program that tells it that it's mine. So how do you gain anything? Only you accept that you gained it. So that's your thought and your thought alone. So did you really gain something or did you have a thought? All right. So this is the thing is we have all been taught to get attached to things that we think that we want, things that we think that we own. And the very attachment that you accept to this object is the very thing that holds you. By that object is now in control of you. Anything that you think that you own owns you. Anything you think you possess possesses you. The reason behind this is, like I was saying, that thing that you think that you possess owes no allegiance to you whatsoever. It's only there because you chose it to be there. Now, although you choosing it to be there does, in a sense, make it your property, that doesn't make it yours. You can't take it with you when you leave here. It's not a part of you. It's nothing that you can actually keep with you. How is it that you would be worried about losing it? How much stuff sits around your house right now? You've got a shit ton of stuff sitting around your house that owns you. If somebody broke into your house right now and stole a bunch of your stuff, would you be okay with it? Would you be perfectly fine mentally if somebody broke into your studio right now, stole your microphone, your computer, your phone, took all your fucking padding off the walls and snatched all the stuff out of your house? You'd be bothered.
Oh, yeah, extremely bothered. I'll be on the prowl looking for the person who took it. I'll be an investigator. I'll go into detective mode because I have an attachment to the studio.
But if you knew that meant that something better was coming, would you even sweat it?
No. See, that's a great point.
You got to get things out of your way in order for you to move forward, right? How's things progress? By removing the things that are holding you back. So if you got a whole bunch of shit that's surrounding you and it all gets stolen from you, did you just lose a bunch of stuff or did you just get prepared for some new stuff?
Bro, woo.
Now you see the difference in that scenario is you would drown yourself in all that negativity. You just explained you're drowning in negativity right there. You're like, no, I'd go after them. There's consequences. There's consequences for doing things like this. I'd go after them. I'd fucking hunt them down. I'd love all my stuff. And okay, congratulations. You get all your stuff back and then you'd still be in less of a boat than you were before because now you got drama and trouble that accrued with that. Now your head's in negative thoughts. Now you're thinking about getting robbed constantly. So what's going to happen? You're going to get robbed more often.
I think, worried about it. You're creating it. Thought, worry is what's permeating and turning into it, and you're bringing it into fruition.
Exactly.
Natural cycle. And that's why it's so good not to let go and not to think of lack. You think abundance. If weren't certain things.
No, if you want abundance, stop thinking you need stuff. Think, how you going? Why would you think that you need stuff if you know that you already have it when you need it?
Yeah, Elion said because it's just stuff.
Check this out. Last week, I lost the trailer that I had. I bought a trailer at a tax auction because the landlord didn't pay the taxes on it. And then me and him went to court and we got into this big ass argument in the court and the court dismissed it and told him he would have to pay me to get me out of the building. I completely forgot about finishing off the paperwork and he ended up selling the title to it under my nose. And within a few hours, I want to say within a day, I'll give it a day total. Within a day total of finding out that they were going to be taking the trailer and evicting me and all this other stuff, within a day of finding out of that, I had this place offered to me for free. Because I knew immediately upon the start of the bullshit, I knew that automatically that something better was about to happen. Before I even made it to the point of being stressed out and on the streets and trying to look, I had a free house offered to me that all I got to do is fix the floor in the kitchen and do some painting and stuff like that. And it would be nice. Only because I knew that immediately upon getting that notice on my door that I was about to have a fucking come up. And everybody, it was funny because we were just having this discussion in one of my lives the night before it. We were having this discussion and this kid was talking to me about how he wanted to get $1 million because he wanted this thing that cost like shit ton of money. It was some kind of car or something like that. I'm like, bro, like, why do you think it costs that? Because that's what it costs. I was like, no, it doesn't. I tried to tell him, no, it doesn't. Everything's free. You just got to understand and know that it's free. And it'll find its way to you. But you got to know it and you got to accept it. You got to really know that you're supposed to have that. And it'll make its way to you. And you got to really fucking accept that shit. He's, no, that's not how things work. I was like, okay. And sure enough, I got a free house the next day. The day after.
Yeah, I remember you talk about that. What I found interesting is that it happened simultaneously. It's like the moment that he sold the property, you was already being offered a new property.
Yeah. People don't understand, man. People don't get it. I've given out free fucking clothes, free food, giving out money, fucking help people with places to stay, fucking all kinds of shit the whole entire time. And it's not karma. It's because that's what I put out into the universe, is that shit was free. So I gave away shit for free. So I get shit for free all the time. And if it's not for free, it's like ridiculous prices. I've had BMWs for $400. So all I had to do was get a starter fixed on it. I have an Audi sitting. I have a convertible Audi, and the other one's sitting in my house at the trailer right now. I have both of those, and I didn't pay $1 for either one of those. Fucking like everything that everybody keeps telling me is like you have to pay for. I don't pay for this shit, and if I do, I pay the same thing that the junkyard would if at the best. Like I don't think I've had to pay full price for anything because I just don't believe in that system. That's not my system. That's not how things work. So the things that I want find their way to me, and I give away things that I want them done with. The reality is that.
Chapter 7, Departing Earth, Attaining True Heaven. It's representation of death. Why did you choose to put that in the book? Why did you choose to educate people on what death really is?
Because people are plagued by death because they've got this screwed up vision of it. They have this idea of death being something that's a negative and that it's bad and all these horrible things about it. But in reality, death is the only time that you get to experience heaven. That's the only time that you really experience heaven. You're in heaven right now. I already explained to you how you're in heaven right now. All the things that you deem to be negative now are just things that you accept and put out into the heaven that are okay. So that's why they exist, right? Think about it. When somebody passes, when you lose somebody that's close to you, right, what does that do for you? That renews everything. Everything is amazing for a short period of time. You get a renewal of life every time somebody that's close to you passes. And it only happens with people that are close to you. It has to be somebody close to you. You've seen random people die. It doesn't. You might have a for them or something like that. But It takes somebody that's truly close to you for you to experience heaven. And what do we mean by this? In their passing, all of a sudden, everything becomes that much more precious to you again. Then all of a sudden, you appreciate the fact that you got your family with you. Then all of a sudden, you appreciate the fact that you got that job that you didn't like the day before. Then all of a sudden, you appreciate the fact that you got that food that you didn't think that you could stand. Then all of a sudden, you understand, upon losing somebody, when somebody passes, the first thing that you get is an experience of heaven. That's what makes you cry in the first place, is because you're going through a moment of bliss. It's by them passing that reminds you how precious and how special every moment really is. So you get to experience heaven for a moment every time that somebody that's close to you passes. That's why you cry. You don't cry because you miss them. You cry because in that moment, the first thing that happens is you get a euphoric blast of all the memories that you have with them. So that overwhelms you with emotions. That's why you cry uncontrollably at funerals. Is because you're constantly reliving blissful moments over and over again, but they're coming so fast you can't even see them. You just feel them. You'll catch a little flash here and there. So when somebody dies, it's not a negative thing. They're giving you the gift of life.
Absolutely. So there's nothing really being lost.
A loss. In fact, it's a beautiful gain that you can only get from somebody that actually really holds a value to you.
Right. I felt that. My nephew took his own life back in 19, and that really affected me. I was very close to my nephew. And when I gave his eulogy at the funeral, it was like, I let everybody know I gained so much from his existence within my life that I didn't really lose him. I may have lost the idea that he is not present in my physical reality where I can actually see and touch his body. Right? He's not like in his body no more where I'm experiencing him. But at the same time, I did nothing but gain so much from the experiences I had for him that those experiences are forever now to that. And I had to learn that during the eulogy that I really didn't lose anything. I just had everything to gain from that experience. And I wanted everybody to celebrate and clap for him. They started clapping for me. I said, don't clap for me, clap for him, because the reason why here is because of him. Everybody that had a connection to him because he had an effect on their life. So they all gained something from him.
See what I mean? Everybody's got this horrible picture of death. And you've got this horrible thing that leaves them with all these haunting memories, but it's the most beautiful thing. None of this would be precious if we didn't have death there. That's the thing that makes it all special in the first place. So if that's what makes it special in the first place, then why is everybody so upset about it who fucked that up for everybody?
There's something distorted there in the way we are programmed collectively to look at death, the whole perception of death. It's a manipulation in the way it's projected on for us to perceive. I heard you say one time, and I see this picture, you have a woman crying for this chapter 7, for departing earth, attaining true heaven. You made a statement when you were giving the breakdown about the Bible and how these scriptures are really pertaining to the body. And you made a comment about, and I looked into it and I was like, wow, there's so much truth in that. That when we cry, that's the rain that falls down from the heavens and that you are the heaven.
Yeah, that's your baptism.
Right, your baptism. Can you elaborate more on that? So we were talking about, you were saying the baptism is the tears that fall from the eyes.
Right. So look, they tell you that a baptism absolves you of all of your sins, right? Now, if you know what your sins are, you know that your sins directly correlate to your endocrine system. Your endocrine system is your hormone system. And all of your sins, whether there's there's lust, which deals with the reproductive organs, not specifically because you can lust after things without it being carnal. Like, you hear what I'm saying? You can lust after items. It doesn't have to necessarily be lust having to do with reproduction and shit like that, but that is a big thing of it. But then you have gluttony, which is the stomach, the pancreas, the thalamus, the pituitary, right? And then you have the throat, which is the thyroid. And then you have the heart, which is it's these TH ones. I always get them mixed up. I think it's the thymus, the thyroid, and the thalamus. Those are the 3 T's in the endocrine system. Now, pride and envy, they also deal with the adrenaline glands. So that's the adrenal and the dopamine. And so all of your sins have to do with your endocrine system. Now, the thing is, when the body is made up of highly structured, it's structured H3O2. It's not H2O. Everybody thinks it's H2O because that's what they tell you, but it's not H2O, it's H3O2. It's structured water. Okay. Now, when you're having negative thoughts, prideful thoughts, lustful thoughts, things like this, you're generating negative thoughts. And those negative thoughts are then going into the waters that are in your body. Now, when they go into the waters in your body and you have an abundance of negative thoughts, what happens is you're killing the water. You're essentially creating H2O. And so the head fills up with the H2O. Now, this is the head. Your head, the brain, is the clouds. That's why it's split into hemispheres. And you have 2 temples, you have 2 hemispheres, and then you have the crown, which is the seat. The crown is your circle of Willis. Now, the seat, the throne of God, is the medulla, the amygdala, and the limbatic lobe, the perennial lobe. Yeah, I think it's the perennial lobe, the medulla, and the pons. I think that makes up the throne, okay? And on top of that is where your circle of Willis sits. That would be God sitting on the throne. That sits in between the 2 temples with the 7 seals, which would be either the 7 vertebrae or the eyes, the ears, the nose, and the mouth. That's 2 ears, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 1 mouth. That's your 7. So either way, those are both your 7 seals to the heaven. Now, when you have a baptism, they tell you that it's the water from the holy water coming from the holy place. The holy place on your body is your head. So when you're having a baptism, what you're doing is you're crying. That's releasing of the waters of the heavens that absolve you of all the sins. This is why when you're crying, what you're doing is releasing the pressure that's building up in the negative waters. All that negative memory that gets stored in the water is what you release when you cry. So this is your baptism because it pours down from the heavens to the earth. The earth is your heart. That's why earth and heart are spelt the same. Not exactly the same. They're flipped, but earth and heart are the same exact thing. And when you're crying, that's the waters that are pouring from the heaven down to the earth. And when you cry, it absolves you of all of your sins. You feel amazing when you're done crying. Not when you get dunked into a pool of water inside of a building. That doesn't make you feel amazing. You just feel shocked because you got dunked in some water and held under there.
Exactly.
So a baptism is when you cry. That is what a true baptism is. Once you're done crying, you forget all the things that were bothering you because they literally came out of your eyes. When your body is full of toxins, you have wet that stinks. When you drink something like coffee and fill your stomach with a whole bunch of spores and you got poison in your stomach, your bladder kicks it out. When your head is full of a bunch of dead water, your eyes push it out. Now, if you don't push it out, that then washes over your whole entire body, and your whole entire body gets full of negativity because it stayed within those waters. And as it's traveling through, because you tried to eat it, it starts traveling through your system. That's when you start getting weird feelings. You get weird feelings of energy and you get really irritable and your system starts to get really shorted out and you can't think straight because you're full of fucking broken water that makes it so that the conductivity of your body doesn't work. And then you're what? You're lowering your frequency. This is how your vibration goes down. You're a being of frequency and energy. It's a magnetism. When you don't have the thing to feed the magnetism, what happens? You start to lose strength. As your negative thoughts are destroying the structure of the water that's in your body, those negative thoughts are then flowing through your body, breaking the conductivity of it, making it so that you're lowering your fucking energy, literally. This is why negative thoughts are bad for the body. It's not because you're having negative thoughts and you're thinking something evil about somebody. No, it's because you're literally programming the water in your body. When you release those thoughts, they go through your water and then out into the universe. That's how they get magnified.
That's right.
So when you have a negative thought and you don't cry and you don't release it, what happens? It goes to your body and then you think of it like a week later because it makes it back to your brain. And then it's sitting on your brain, literally. This is why they tell you that those negative thoughts are on your mind. They always tell you it's on your mind, but nobody realizes how serious this is of a statement.
And then when those negative charges that charge up the water to run through your body, that's what causes dis-ease because you're stressing and then it weakens the organs. It's intoxicating the organs with dirty water, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you give poisonous water to a plant, it dies, right?
Right. Exactly. And quick too, real quick.
Why do you think people die from stress? It's not the stress that kills them. It's the broken water because they can't regulate their energies properly. This is where the grounding and the sun gazing comes into play. The thing that everybody's told to avoid. Oh, you're dirty if you go outside barefoot. Okay.
That's how people, they work for 40, 50 years and then they retire and they die within the year of retirement.
You know why? That job was giving them exercise. The exercise was creating extra energy. You would think that exercising would expend energy, but what that does is builds up your body's resistance, making it actually produce more energy because it feels like it needs more, so it produces more. So they sat down with all the dead stuff inside of them, and it just fucking right out.
That's right. Compliance is chapter 9. It says containment, occupying, mastery, producing, lives, accepting, needlessly chaotic environments.
Mm-hmm.
And let me say something before you expound on that. The needlessly accepting chaotic environments. This is something that I am learning about myself in ways that I can't even put into words. It's ineffable. I want to thank you in advance for helping me to grow in not having to accept needlessly chaotic environment. Because a
lot of us do it to ourselves. We do it to ourselves because we've been taught that certain things are necessary. We've been taught that there's certain things that are guaranteed to happen, certain type of results that are going to yield this, and certain type of things that are going to do this. And so we accept people's behaviors and we accept things that take place around us as something that's okay and that's normal, but in reality it's not. We're looking at chaos all around us and accepting it as something that's just normal. It's not normal. We just accepted it. We're just choosing to stand idly by and allow this to be the reality that it is because we were told that there's nothing that we could do about it. And people comply with that. They accept that. People do this. People accept things and comply with things that don't feel a need to change things because they're afraid of change. People live in a very small comfort bubble. A lot of people need order. They feel like they need order and they need structure to survive. These are what I call NPCs.
And peace, non-participating characters.
And they don't participate. They just go with the flow of whatever. Why? That's the opposite of existence. You're not here to go with the flow. If you were here to go with the flow, you wouldn't be necessary. You're here to look from the outside. You're here to step outside of what is going on. You're not here to comply with everything that they're telling you. If everything that they were saying was working, you wouldn't be seeing all this chaos around you. But you're accepting that and you're embracing that as the reality, which is creating it in the moment that you're accepting it and letting that be. Like, okay, right? That dude that got the trailer, that bought it, right? Me and him had a long talk. Because I allowed him to take it instead of fighting him and stuff. I could have made him pay me shit tons of money to get me out of there. I could have beat him in court. I could have fought to keep that building, but I already knew that something better was coming anyway, so I wasn't worried about it. But he had a moral dilemma with what he was doing, and he should, because if it had been anybody else in my situation, things could have went a lot worse, right? Because at that point, essentially, that's stealing somebody's place and somebody's sanity and somebody's investment and somebody's this. And I had to explain to him, this is that whole thing that I was talking to you about earlier about sometimes you got to punch somebody in the mouth. This was somebody that needed a verbal punching. Why? Because he was doing something that he knew was morally incorrect. But because he accepted it for being just business, he was using that as his moral standpoint of justification of the thing that he was feeling morally incorrect about, which was stealing a place from somebody that he knew that he was stealing it from once I explained to him the depth of the entirety of the situation. And so he chose to continue forward with that action, even knowing that it was morally wrong and that he was wrong for what he was doing and that there's a billion other ways he could have went about it. His choice to accept the chaos that he was creating. I was like, man, you got to think about this. I'm not the one having an issue with this. I'm good. I already moved before you even had me evicted. I was already gone and out of there. My situation is fine. But for you, on the other hand, what happens with the next person that you go to buy a property from? Okay. All right. First off, we have to realize that hate doesn't exist. Hate is something that you've been taught. It does not exist. There is no such thing as hate. That is a fallacy. That is something that has been taught. That is a gift from the learned ones. You can thank them for that idea. You've never hated anything in your life. The only things that you think that you hate are the things that you love so much in one specific way that you can't accept them outside of the way that you view them. So there's literally nothing that you hate, right? There's nothing that you've ever hated. Like, you just don't accept something for being the way that it is. It's not hate. That is your inability to conform to something being less than how you view it to be. That's not hate. Right. That just means you love something a little excessively. And you see it outside of that view. So hate is non-existent. That's something that has to be unlearned. That's why it's in there in the mix with love in the first place. Is because you're told that that's the opposite of love, and that's a complete fallacy. There is no opposite to love.
Just like or supposedly hating on you, they're not really hating you. They're just unrealized potential. Whatever potential they see in you, they can't see it within themselves.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But it's a word, I'll be honest with you, it's a word that I use a lot. So I got to get that out of my program.
Yeah. We've been programmed to live in these different realities. We've been programmed to accept these things. That goes with the compliance. Hate. It's straight chaos to think that you hate something. You have to convince yourself that you don't love something. And they give you hints about it. They tell you, there's a thin line between love and hate. No, that's because there is no hate. That's just too much love and your incapability to see outside of that. All right, that's all that hate is. So it's not even a real thing. Now, as far as joy goes, actually, no, we'll start with vulnerability. We'll start with what people think is a negative. Here's the thing. There's nothing that you love that doesn't bring you vulnerability. There's nothing, let me repeat this, there is nothing that you tell me that you love that does not make you vulnerable. But for some reason, we've been taught that vulnerability is a weakness. We've been taught that vulnerability is a negative. We've been taught that vulnerability is something that is a bad characteristic or something. No, if it doesn't make you vulnerable. Just by loving something, you're giving a portion of you over to it. That leaves you open. That leaves you open for interpretation. That leaves you open for hurt. That leaves you open for loss. That leaves you open to be angry. That leaves you open for stress. That leaves you open for everything that comes with that thing that you love. Leaves you vulnerable immediately. It's something that you experience immediately upon anything that you enjoy. You're automatically vulnerable the moment that you enjoy it. There's nothing that you can do to escape that. And so for it to be put on the side that people deem negative is a fallacy. How is that a negative if you're guaranteed it? You cannot escape it. It's guaranteed. It's part of everything that you're involved in. How can being vulnerable be a negative if joy is a positive? Joy is no more guaranteed than vulnerability is, because that very thing that's giving you that feeling of joy is making you vulnerable in that moment. The thing that you love brings you joy automatically. That's one of the things that you love about it, is the joy and that euphoric state that it's able to bring out of you. That joy then leads you to feeling successful. You now feel like you've gained something. That's a success. That's moving forward in a direction. That's what a gain is. A gain is just moving forward. And so you're feeling success just by the fact that you have the joy that comes from loving something. Success is a guarantee of love. Joy is a guarantee of love. Just as much as vulnerability is a guarantee of love. Just as much as anger and just as much as loss are guaranteed with love. Anything that you love will bring anger out of you at some point. You'll get frustrated, whether it's just because you can't find it. You'll get frustrated because you think of it in that moment and don't have it. You'll get frustrated about it because you want to know more about it and you can't figure it out. You'll get Love guarantees anger. Love guarantees loss. You only find it so precious because you know what it would be without it, or you can't imagine yourself without it. Loss is guaranteed with love. It's something that comes with it. Outside of the loss, you have what? A certain darkness that comes with love. Why does darkness come with love? Because anything that you love automatically makes you worry about everything that's possible that could possibly happen to it. You want to protect it. You want to guard it. You want to keep it safe because you love it. That's a guarantee. All of these different things that people say aren't love are just expressions of love. These are different forms of it. Love has a vast majority of ways that it can be expressed. Love is expressed through action. Love is expressed through the lack of action. Love is expressed through presence, and love is expressed in the absence. Love can be expressed through physical. Love can be expressed mentally. Love can be expressed verbally. Love can be expressed in many different ways. But everybody always focuses on the joy. If it's not joy, then it's not love. That's not fucking true.
That's fact.
Love guarantees everything. You don't love something if it can't make you experience everything. It wouldn't be worth loving in the first place because you're not getting the fullness out of your experience. What would be the point of being involved in something that didn't take you through everything? The difference is the ones that are able to bring you out of the anger, bring you out of the joy, bring you out of the vulnerability, bring you out of the stress, bring you out of the loss, bring you out. These are the people that we stay with longer. When we're immature in our relationships, it's the people that bring us out of these positions that we stay with longer. Once you mature in your relationship, it's you that brings your partner out of those positions. And you that won't be able to get stuck in these things, right? That's the difference. That's the maturity level. When we haven't fully grown to know and accept that all of these things come with this thing that's called love, which is just a binding. All that love is your binding. That's all it is. You're binding to something in a physical world. That's where love comes from. It's your decided bond. And in you deciding that bond exists, there's all of these things that are going to come with it. And a lot of times people think that the things that are on the left side of that wheel don't belong with love, but they're guaranteed. You can't have love without those being involved. The difference is when we rely on our partner to bring us out of those versus when we bring ourselves out of those. That's the difference. That's the hard part that it takes getting to, is the point to where when your partner starts yelling at you because they're feeling insecure, you realize, oh, they're just telling me that they love me and they don't want to fucking lose me. So let me reinforce that. Versus them yelling at you about it and then you turn around and yelling at them for them yelling at you about it instead of, you get me? That's when it goes from the loss into the anger.
And that's a very hard discipline to maintain, what you just said there.
Let me tell you. Look, my ex used to argue with me about this. He would be like, you tell these people, you got them thinking that you're so perfect. I'd be like, no, they don't think I'm perfect. No, they know. I'm sharing this with you because I'm working on it every day myself. Like, I don't want people thinking that I'm some perfect and I've got this master. This isn't something that you master. This is something that you get tested on every day.
That's right. Yep.
That's the trick of it, is it's a consistency, it's training yourself. See, it took me like 10 years of understanding that every time that I went through something hard, that something better was right around the corner, to get it to the point to where something better was around the corner before the something that I thought was hard even dealt blow to me. It took me like 10 to 15 years of just accepting the fact that, you know what, I've made it through every one of my fucking situations, and having it reinforced every time by acknowledging, look, things got better. Oh yeah, look, things got better. So what's that mean? Things are about to get better. And then it becomes, oh shit, things are about to get better. Instead of, oh fuck, here we go again. You see, people get stuck in that, oh fuck, here we go. They get stuck in that immediately. Why? Because we get that negative fucking view.
And I'm so much better at dealing with that, of not getting stuck in that mode of, here we go again, and projecting a thought that now that's what I'm going to continuously experience. Because if I do, it's exactly what I'm going to get. So I know that I create my reality. So I have to deal with certain things. I have to change things up and not accept these certain things that happen in a certain way and say, this is the only the way that's going to happen. No, it's not, because I can create something new in the blink of an eye that can completely destroy that what I thought was going to happen in the future, for it to not happen anymore.
See, everybody's got this crazy idea that we've got this path that we're supposed to follow. No, man, you were told you had free will the whole time. Your path is not set. You're building it in the moment. Start paying attention to what you're building.
Circumstance make the man. It reveals it to himself. Mm-hmm. We are experienced. We put ourselves, everything. Not one thing that happens to us that we didn't create for ourselves.
Hey, look, I was writing that book when I was in jail. I was in jail for a month because I went through the wrong part of America. I ran the wrong kind of people, and I went through a whole bunch of crazy shit. Ended up going to jail over it. And
what state was that in, by the way?
Arkansas.
Arkansas, yeah. Woo.
Yeah, the home base of the KKK. So that's about all the information I have to give you on that situation. So yeah, it was 100% like you would think it would be in the movies. Like, it was all the way like that. And I wrote this while I was in there. And what I was doing while I was writing it was I was having the people that were in jail reading it. And it was very interesting. This is why I was so excited to get it out to the public, and why I was so shocked that it didn't just fucking blow off the way that I originally thought it was. Because I took a group full of men that were basically at the end of their wits, on the verge of crying, losing their shit, snapping, feeling like at the bottom of the parts of their lives, and let them read my book as I was writing it, and made them accept the fact that they put themselves there, and made them come to terms with everything that they did, to the point to where it was just a straight party for the last 2 weeks that I was in there. Like, we were all just, it took all the stress out of it. It took everybody's anguish and frustration like right out the window. It was so awesome. It was awesome to see how it worked. And I was like, oh, wow, that's what made me so excited about it. That's why I was like, oh shit, I think I got it, yo. Because like I got them to accept the fact, like, you know, going over to Maxims and stuff. I was like, look, I want you to realize that, like, you knew that you were going to be here by the action that you took to put you in here. So really what you want to figure out is why you wanted to be here away from everything else, instead of just focusing on the fact that you're here now, because you put yourself here. So you put yourself here because you needed like a vacation from something. So you need to figure out what that is, because you took those steps because you had it in your mind. Just every relationship that ends, it's the same thing. Every relationship that you've ever ended never failed. You never failed in any relationship. You never got dumped in any relationship. Because every relationship that you've ever been in your life, after you went through all the offerings of the Maxims, right? After you went through all the offerings of the Maxims and you completed the experience, you started doing an action that in your mind told you, hey, look, if you keep doing this is probably going to end this relationship. You know that. And you were like, yeah, but I'm going to fucking do it. And you did it. And you kept on doing it until that relationship came to an end. And that person might have went ape shit on you. They might have fucking flipped out on you and cursed you out, and they might have dumped you, and they might have left you, and you might have felt like shit and been up over that relationship for like months. Might have took you a year or two to recover from that shit. That's only because you didn't accept the fact that you ended it. There's not a relationship. There is not one single relationship that you can tell me that didn't end by an action that you thought prior that was going to end it. You've chosen to end every relationship. See, because once you complete the maxims, there's nothing for you to get out of that experience. So your body's going to put you out of that experience. You're done.
That's right.
You're done. There's nothing. You have to move on to the next one. But you're here to experience. You're not here to fucking experience and then do nothing. You're here to keep experiencing. You're in heaven. This shit is jam-packed. And everything all the time. You're not sitting here stagnant. No, you're getting everything. It's just, welcome to heaven. Now that it's heaven, start fucking treating it like it. Start respecting it. Start enjoying it. And start fucking acting on the things that you feel are incorrect. Because it's not going to change until you do. Everything's waiting on you. It's not waiting on me. It's waiting on you. I'm doing my part. I've done my part. I've done my part over and over again. I keep putting out more and more information. I keep speaking to more and more people. What you don't realize, this is my 9th profile.
9th. Wow.
9. My 10th one is sitting there with about 12,000 people on it. My 11th one is sitting there with about 2,000 people on it. My first profile had 140,000 people on it before it went down. Been doing this. I've been talking to people. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm making my change in the consciousness. I've been doing it for 4 or 5 years now on TikTok. I've just been talking to people. And it was going on way before TikTok. But TikTok just made it even better. Like, it's way better.
Oh, I feel it too.
Like, I could just really talk to people and have like full-on conversations and stuff. And that helped me a lot. That helped me grow a lot. That helped me figure out a lot of things a lot quicker too.
Hey, by the way, a couple of people said
ahead.
Book, Knowledge is Power. If you want to buy the book, just go to the Book of Johnson on TikTok and go to his bio, and you can get his book called The Kingdome on Amazon. But go to his bio and order it from there. It'll take you to the link and all that stuff. All right.
If you want the digital copy, I also have a second book. It's not like the first book. The first book basically is literally nothing but reshaping the subconscious. And then it teaches you some astrology, the real astrology, not the bullshit that everybody's fucking going by now. But the second book is an online curriculum that I'm putting together. It's already done. It's going to continue growing. But I have an e-folder that I give out. It's 50 now that it's got both books in it. It was going to be 25 per book. But it also has occult teachings that deal with Hermeticism from different cultures. Then it also teaches you how to read and write the Mayan hieroglyphs. It also has all the Mayan codexes, which are the origin of the religious text. So if you study the hieroglyphs, you'll be able to read the original, what was the text before they became religious texts. And then all of that plays into this because inside of those is keys and codes to the human body about things that people don't even realize. And there's a lot of secret information it's not even hidden in them. It's just that we don't get it publicly or we're not given basic understanding of it when it's really a simple system once you actually get into it. So if you're interested in participating in that, how we've done it is there's one folder that has all the pictures for what would be considered the course. And what you do is you print those out and we make you a binder and put some lined paper in between each one of the pictures. And each week on TikTok, every Sunday, I have a class and we go over one of the pages for the people that are subscribed to my TikTok. It's a live private class. And then that's going to be recorded and put on YouTube for the people that just bought the folder so that they're able to make their own notes because words are spells. And even though the first book is pretty much nothing but words, right? The second book is going to be a book that is nothing but pictures, and then you will write your own spells to that. So I'm going to explain to you what it is, and then you're going to put it in your own words, because by putting it in your own words and writing it down yourself, you're now putting your own intention and your own thought into it as you're doing it, which is making it stick, and it's rewriting the programming as you're doing it. So it's not just a learning workshop, it's also a reprogramming workshop. So for people that are interested in that, all you got to do is Cash App or Venmo the Book of Johnson. It's all one word, just the Book of Johnson. All right, you Cash App or Venmo the Book of Johnson with a $50 donation, and you'll get access to the folder with both the books in it. And if you just want the first book, which is the Kingdome, and access to the folder, that's $25. But it's just $25 extra for the curriculum. Truly a beautiful experience that we have been given. Try not to get lost listening to these people telling you what you have to do in order to accomplish certain things. Find a way to make it work for yourself. I can give you guidelines and things like that. But if you notice, the guidelines that I give you are just stepping stones. It's not a direct do this, except for on certain things because of how the brain is actually functioning, right? Outside of that, everything is up to your interpretation. You don't have to accept somebody else's reality as your own. You don't have to take it on the way that they tell you to. We're here to experience things from our own perspectives. Don't be so hung up on the afterlife that you miss the life that you're living. Don't be so worried about being God that you forget that you're here to experience being a person. Don't overlook the gift of life that you've been given trying to figure out what happens afterwards and miss the whole entire experience of yourself. Like, you're here to experience this from the perspective that you were given. You're not here to be a god. You're not here to be in control of everything. You're here to try to experience this from a mortal standpoint so that you can learn and adjust accordingly so that when you do create, you create something that is going to be enjoyable for all things that are involved. So remember this when you're getting involved with somebody that seems like they're having a bad day or a bad moment that might be flipping out on you or yelling at you, and think about how you would want somebody to manage that when it came down to you being in the same position. Right. Everything doesn't have to be complicated, doesn't have to be difficult. It's what we choose to accept as our reality that folds and shapes what we live in this experience that we have. Through learning all the different things that come with love, it will make it so much easier for you to just enjoy what you're going through, because instead of going into a situation where somebody's angry with you and you end up being depressed because of it, you can take yourself out of it simply by understanding that they're angry with you because they love you so much. When you can take these things that they tell you that are negative and now use them as validation of the fact that somebody finds value in you, it then turns the tables to keep you living positively. And the key is to living positively, because when you live negatively, you literally shorten your life. Think about it. Pay attention. Every time that you get angry or upset about something, you're losing hours, you're losing days, you're losing weeks. Is it worth it for you to be that upset to end your experience that much quicker? Is that person worth it? Is that thing worth it? Or is that just another thing that you forgot? Like all the other bullshit that you thought was a problem when you thought it was a problem.
That's right. Wow, man. Thank you so much for taking the time out.
Thank you for having me, man. It's my first time being a guest on something.
It is. This isn't that we need to do often, because you got a lot to share, and it's all about unity consciousness, collaboration, and a great job of unity consciousness collaboration today in bringing some insight into what we're experiencing and how we're dealing with this experience, and understanding, most importantly, that it's just an experience that's meant to be, and that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. So let's make the most out of it, and let's take it, right? Because we only get it one time until we do it again. But if we're doing, let's do it. Let's get the most out of it, because there is no such thing as time.
If you'd have a hard time making the right decision, I want you to think about this. Every decision you make right now is that voice that you hear in your head, that you've been hearing in your head your whole life. Because time doesn't exist. And they always tell you that it's your higher self that knows better, which means that you would have to experience it first in order to be able to tell yourself. The mind fuck that I'm going to leave you. Are you right now? Or are you just experiencing this so that you're prepared to be the voice in your head that you've been ignoring?
That is a mind fuck. But it's a good one. Brother, man, thank you again. And I can't wait to expound on these discussions. And when we have these types of discussions, for me, and maybe some of the people on the live may feel this, or the people that are going to be listening to the show, I feel like when I have these conversations with people like yourself, there are receptors in the brain that were laying dormant that now have reconnected and rewired and now are activated again. When people say that when they listen to my lives or my shows, that's exactly what they go through. And I feel that kindred spirit with you, where I listen to you and I'm like, damn, he's helping me to reactivate the receptors in the brain that have been laying dormant, the DNA that's been laying dormant there, but now it's being reactivated. You know, what you do and what others do is we're helping each other bring ourselves back to the 12-strand helix. And it's the strand nonsense that we've been operating. So appreciate you so much, man.
No, thank you for having me on. I love it and I appreciate it. Get your audience for hanging out.
Yes, thank you. So this is Booker Johnson, people. Get his book, The Kingdome, all right? Definitely check him out. All right, brother. Peace, love, and life. All right, that was Booker Johnson, people.